Anyone who's ever purchased a home or sold a home goes to a thing called the closing at a title company. And that's where I am today, at Stewart Title in Tucson, Arizona. Joining me now is Eva Hendricks. She is the Business Development Manager. Nice to see you, Eva.
Nice to see you, Rob.
Okay, for those who have not ever been to a closing, or for those who've had a home that they've lived in 25, 35, 40 years, this is a new experience for them. Tell us about what happened to you recently.
So I was invited to speak in front of homeowners who are walking away from their homes, and now they're going into a 55 and over community where they're going into the next phase of their lives. And they just want to keep life easy and simple. They don't want to maintain a 5-bedroom home. They don't want to maintain acreage. And they've decided to walk away from their beautiful luxury homes in Tucson.
At that conference, you had a lot of home owners ask you about an early bird. What is an early bird?
So an early bird is basically when a seller chooses to get an escrow started ahead of time. We run a prelim, and we're making sure that their property does not have any liens or attachments or encumbrances, so that way when the contract comes in, they're ready to close escrow.
How many of them probably have become millionaires over their lives, and they may have a trust that they're dealing with? Can a title company help them with stuff like that?
Absolutely. The beauty of it is a lot of them have trust. A lot of them have free and clear homes. They were professionals, judges, doctors, and they have planned for this. And so now they're in the process of, what can I do? How fast is this done? Who pays for what? And the beauty is we're able to take care of them and answer all their questions and bring them through the process without any hiccups and make sure that their transaction closes so they can move into this facility and be taken care of.
Okay, so can you tell us, well, who does pay for what? And for example, the buyer's got obligations, the seller has obligations. How can you answer those questions?
Well, I have two amazing professionals here today, two escrow officers that are going to be explaining the seller's process and the escrow process and who pays for what.
Coming up, do you want to sell a family home with questions about survivorship or probate court? A good title company can help. Stay tuned.
Joining me now to answer even more questions about closing at a title company is Judy Butner, and she is a manager here at Stewart Title. Okay, Judy, Eva talked about the early bird. This is where people who've lived in their homes a long time have a lot of questions, and they might want to do a pre-check before they put that thing on the market.
Right.
Have you ever found any situations where, you can't sell your home right now?
Absolutely. We've had situations where a seller would own the property in a trust, and one of the co-trustees is deceased, and the title's never been cleared up. Or we have a situation where somebody actually passed away and they didn't hold title as either joint tenants with rights of survivorship or community property with rights of survivorship. Therefore, we have to do a probate prior to being able to list and sell the property. So a personal representative is appointed. We've had situations when we get the early bird, we have encroachments. We could have IRS liens, old child support liens, and their child's 40.
Interesting. So for people who've lived in their homes a long time, it might be a good idea to get their title company to do a pre-check, to get all of this out of the way. Now, how do you help them, quote, clean it up and get it ready for sale?
Well, we basically, when we get an early bird, it's kind of a handshake. You know, we're going to help you clean up this title, but when you do get a contract on the property, we would like you to bring it back to us. Yes.
Can you give us an example of some things that might shock a person who hasn't sold a home in a long time?
Yes. Well, we don't necessarily determine who pays for what the contract does. In Arizona, the Arizona Association of Realtors have a standard contract that they use. Pre-printed in that contract, it'll state that the seller provides the buyer with an owner's title insurance policy. The buyer would provide the lender if they have one. Escrow fee would be split 50-50. It's a customary cost. We would have a transaction processing fee that's split. Recording fees, we, say the deeds, some of us split the recording fee on a deed. The buyer would be responsible to pay the recording fee for their mortgage, affidavits of disclosures, releases possibly.
The bottom line is, it seems as though there is a complicated list of things
yes.
that must be worked out. But that's the beauty of a title company.
Yes.
You do all that.
We're their third disinterested party. We close according to the terms of their contract, and we follow it to the letter of the law.
Coming up, before selling a home, educate yourself on issues of money deposits, escrow, insurance, fees, and title commitments. A good title company can help. Stay tuned.
Well, Judy informed us about the nightmare scenarios that could happen if you have an old lien or didn't pay your taxes in 1978. So, sellers aside, now let's talk about buyers. And joining me now is Diane, who handles the buyers specifically. Diane, educate buyers right now. Of course, it's intimidating to buy a home, and it's expensive. Let's be honest.
It's expensive. It can be scary and a whole bunch at one time when you go in and buy your house, especially if you're a first-time home buyer.
Yes, and you say, oh, I saved my down payment, but
Right.
there seems to be so much more. And
There is, yes.
so tell us a little bit about what buyers can expect.
So the first thing they want to do, obviously, they've done their first hurdle, they found a house, they've been pre-qualified for a loan, now they go into escrow, which means they have a contract. First step, absolutely, is they want to deposit earnest money. They can do that 3 ways with their title company. We can take a check, they can walk in personally and do that. They can wire funds to us, or we actually have the ability to do a mobile deposit.
A title insurance protects the buyer, probably more than anybody.
Yes, that is the purpose of what we do. We're here to ensure that we have free and clear title transferred to the buyer by the time they record and close.
So what is a closing like for a buyer?
We are always available during the transaction. I always like to call and introduce myself to the buyers and their agent and let them know we're here. So the first step is we run title, meaning we run a title commitment on the property. We share that with the buyer with any disclosures that they might have.
What are some shockers to buyers that they're like, oh, I have to pay for that?
Exactly. First thing they'll do is they're responsible for their appraisal. So that is a lender fee that they do pay. A lot of times they pay for it up front with the lender, or they'll pay for it at closing. Title fees are there as well. One thing they do pay is the lender's policy. So typically with the contract, the seller pays the owner's policy, but the lender's policy is necessary to cover the lender's coverage, and the buyer does pay that.
So the bottom line is that it is a complicated process.
Yes.
You do all the work.
Yes.
But the buyer must be receptive to your instruction.
Absolutely. When we follow that instruction from both the buyer and their agent, absolutely. We're here to facilitate and make sure they understand the process from start to finish.